Hey folks, welcome back. A few months ago I've tried a Burson Soloist 3X GT that drove my entire headphone collection with no exception, leaving always a ton of headroom. But a year ago I've tried their Conductor 3X Performance that was basically a DAC, a headphone amp, a preamp put into one single box. But today I'll be trying out basically their best of all-in-one device that includes everything they learned from their past mistakes. All their best was put in here. It's also quite an expensive unit as it goes for 3,000 bucks. So will it suck or will it rock with all my headphones and when put versus price or components? Let's find that out together. Obviously, it looks very much the same with the rest of the Conductor, Timekeeper and Soloist devices, so it has the same cool case that tripled its surface area, that of course improved its heat dissipation. However, this time around, Burson pushed its internal max current power supplies to their maximum, including its power transistors, that a silent Noctua cooler was added that will be pulling hot air from within its case for a better heat dissipation. We've already seen that on the Soloist 3X GT, but since Burson is always tweaking their gear, this time around they elevated the motherboard a little, they put taller rubber feet and bigger windows around power transistors, so it would run cooler, prolonging the life of its electronics. As for controls, its faceplate looks identical to that of the Soloist GT and Conductor 3R reference. You have a 4-pin XLR balanced output, a regular 1/4-inch headphone jack, and a 3.5mm microphone input, a few buttons like on-off, input and output selectors, settings, and flip the screen button. A monochrome OLED screen sits in the middle and of course a volume wheel to its right that offers exactly 99 steps. On its back you'll find a USB Type-C, coaxial, optical and a Bluetooth antenna socket. On the analog side there are 2 pairs of XLR and 2 pairs of RCA inputs, a pair of RCA and XLR analog outputs. A subwoofer output will come in handy not only with your stereo setup but also with your headphones. 3 triggers are also in there and that's basically it. As for tech inside it, its digital section is based on 2 ES9038 DAC chips. They have already plenty of experience with this particular silicon because all their devices are using this one. And instead of going with off-the-shelf op-amps, they used all discrete V6 Vivid op-amps and combined with a new feedback-based gain control. The resulting unit is basically their best DAC of today. Apart from this, we are dealing with a fully discrete, fully balanced preamp and headphone amplifier section that's working in a deeper Class A operation. It uses 8 output transistors, outputting 10 watts per channel on its balanced output and half of that power on its single-ended output. 3 discrete op-amps are used per channel, and if you are into op-amp rolling, you can do that too. Just make sure to use dual op-amps only. Lastly, there's a flagship Qualcomm Bluetooth receiver that supports all the latest codecs as aptX HD and LDAC, and its Bluetooth antenna will help you with a few concrete walls sitting in between it and the sender. Alright guys, this is pretty much it. Let's check how it actually performs. When I'm looking back at all my DAC/amp combo reviews, then all of them had some sort of flaws, either coming from their DAC or headphone amplifier sections. For example, I really like the sound of the Matrix Audio Element X. It had an amazing DAC section, really one of the best Delta Sigma DACs that I tried up to this point, but its headphone amplifier section was really so-so. It couldn't drive almost anything. It could drive these ones, 2 op-amps cannot drive a lot of headphones. And the same can be said about Matrix Mini i3 Pro. That was a great DAC, but a so-so headphone amplifier. And there are many other examples to give, SMSL M500 and many other devices. On the other end of the rope, there were devices that had amazing headphone amplifier sections like Flux Labs FCN10 that had that all discrete, transistor-based Class A amplifier that could drive basically anything, including these ones. But its DAC section was not shining as brightly. It was not pushing and pulling information so easily, so it was good, but it was not a great sounding DAC. However, I believe that Burson tries to change this formula completely with their Conductor Grand Tour, because this is a very different animal altogether. So it basically has a soloist 3X GT inside, so of course it's really their most powerful headphone amplifier. It's also one of the cleanest headphone amplifiers, so of course it can drive anything, including the Hi-Fi Susvara and LCD5, anything else. And its DAC section, while it uses the same two ES9038 that you can also spot on their reference, conductor reference, there's a new output stage and a new feedback-based gain control that basically elevated its DAC performance. So much so that I believe this is basically the best DAC of today. In my opinion, it's better to their Composer 3X performance DAC. I wanted you to understand why such unit exists and really what's so special about it. And I believe that this one flies the Burson flag as the most ambitious project, basically combining a great DAC with a great preamp, with a great headphone amplifier, all put into a single sexy case. Excited? You should. Sound-wise, it does remind me about the sound of their past Conductor series as performance, as reference, but this time around everything, felt much higher. So power went up, signal-to-noise ratio went up, noise floor went down, channel crosstalk went down. There's a lot more refinement. There's more headroom with low sensitivity headphones, and of course there is more low-level information. So this one is definitely clearer, more detailed sounding compared to past Conductor devices. So it's in another league altogether compared to past Conductor devices. I know that I didn't post my Odyssey LCD5 review as of yet, because finding a perfect match for them is actually quite a challenge. And while yes, they sound like heaven with with that Denafrips Terminator Plus put on Travamatic Audio Primavera, not everybody can afford such an endgame setup with with headphones. But I believe Burson tries to change that preconception for good with the Grand Tourer, because I've heard an amazing bass performance with the LCD5, and LCD5 is not that amazing in the sub bass, and of course it improved their soundstage capabilities. That again, it's not so impressive on the LCD5. So yeah, I believe that right now you can have all the technicalities you wish with a single device, single all-in-one device. Several things stood out immediately with the GT while powering the LCD5, and not only the LCD5, basically with all other headphones. And those are dynamics, so impressive dynamics. It has impressive transient response. The soundstage always tries to, all that music always tries to go outside my head. There's an overwhelming sensation of power on control. And finally, there is no listening fatigue whatsoever, even with hotter sounding headphones as Hi-Fi, for example. Power-wise, I was at around 20, maybe 25 out of 100 with dynamic driver headphones, as Sennheiser HD800S, as Apos Caspian, Kineton Valley, LZH Mania, many others. Of course, there was bottomless headroom remaining on top, and I really don't see the point of using high gain with such headphones. With planar headphones, with the exception of the Hi-Fi Susvara, I was at around 35, maybe 40 with classical music, and it was always, very fun sounding, very engaging sounding. It was offering Speedy Gonzalez levels of speed and Mjolnir levels of bass impact and slum, so it was very fun sounding. I don't remember hearing my planars so, so impactful sounding out of a solid state amplifier, so it was very impressive. With Hi-Fi Susvara, I was at around 60, maybe 65 with classical music with high dynamic range tracks. and only for a few seconds because it was already way too loud. So again, there was plenty of headroom remaining on top, and since this is basically the hardest to drive headphone, I believe that all others will work no problem. So be them ABs, LCD4, all others, it doesn't really matter, it will drive them all. So Svara were of course lively, impactful, fun sounding, and were revealing lots of information behind my tracks, exactly how a well-made statement headphone amplifier should do. And if you are craving for limitless power, then you are definitely watching the right video. Power is of course nothing without control, and that's really what differentiates brute power from clean, undistorted power. So putting a lot of raw power inside a metal case is no big deal, it's not that complicated, I can do that myself. But making that power clean, undistorted, well, that's actually the big challenge. So if you are looking at the numbers, then the Grand Tourer has the highest signal-to-noise ratio from all their conductors, meaning that you need to go much higher until traces of noise will be crawling inside your headphones. And that was certainly the case with all my headphones, be them planar magnetics or dynamics, because I couldn't detect anything really. Only with the APOS Caspian and only on the high gain there was a little bit of noise, but only because those are very sensitive. Now moving on to ultra sensitive IEMs like Fire FH9, like FA9, then I could spot some noise, some gremlins playing in the background, regardless of the gain position, but it was certainly a little louder on the high gain. On the low gain, there was that faint, low-intensity hum that was always constant, no matter if it was rising or decreasing that volume, so it was always the same. However, if I was changing the brightness of its screen to high, then it will be a little bit louder. So if you want the cleanest possible signal from this one, simply use its low brightness position, and I hope that Burson will be addressing that issue pretty soon. When I move to regular IEMs, so not ultra-sensitive ones, like 7 Hz timeless, then again I couldn't spot anything playing in the background. On the low gain, it was simply noiseless. And if you are one of those crazy dudes that are driving ultra-sensitive IEMs with desktop headphone amplifiers, simply use an IFI IEM match and just forget about noise for good. Moving on to Transient Response, my favorite part. If you've ever tried a Burson-made amplifier before, then you already know how scary these can sound, how impressive in terms of dynamics, how fast, how impactful, always punching and kicking diaphragms like punching bags. So things improved quite a lot with the Soloist 3X GT, always sounding very alive, punchy, ass-kicking. So much so that the rest of the solid-state headphone amplifiers that were sitting on my table were simply mellower sounding, or dare I say, boring sounding by comparison. Simply put, Conductor GT uses the same amplifier stage of the Soloist GT. It lives by the same principles, so it will bring the fun, it will bring the thunder, regardless of your headphones that you are using. It could be even the half-ounce Svara. The bass impact coming out of this thing was nothing short of spectacular, just getting my full attention once music started playing. From my entire headphone collection, I believe that LCD5, LCD4, half-ounce Svara, Kineton Drogner, and HD800S were basically my best picks for this particular combo, never running out of breath. More like on the opposite, putting more logs on fire with high dynamic range tracks. Moving on to how clean and how transparent it can sound. In its stock form, all those fine details, all those micro details were popping really everywhere, so it was not really a challenge focusing on them. But after adding that supercharger, everything that was playing in the background was brought to the surface. It was more highlighted, more contoured in a way, so clearly it was clearer sounding with the supercharger. What was really interesting is that reference tracks weren't only clearer and more transparent, but also livelier, fuller bodied, more fun sounding in a way. And after some investigation, it seemed that supercharger doubles the charging frequency of power capacitors inside the unit, so the final outcome is a more engaging, fun, livelier sound with the supercharger. I had at my disposal some of the cleanest sounding headphone amplifiers on the market, so Hearing another crystal clear one wouldn't impress me right away. Still, after engaging this one and putting the Hyphen Vara on my head, it was clear to me that I'm dealing with a very transparent sounding amplifier, so all-in-one unit. It was slowly, but slowly disappearing from my acoustic chain, showing all the finest details. Something that I cannot say about a lot of all-in-one combos, with the exception of one unit. So when it comes to DAC I'm combos, when it comes to cleanness, only 2 units impressed me, and those were FiO K9 Pro ESS version and of course the Grand Tourer, the Conductor Grand Tourer. Both have very defined contours, leading edges, trying to steal my attention with low intensity notes. But this one was more impressive because it was never, even for a microsecond, clinical sounding as FiO K9 Pro ESS can become with hotter sounding headphones like Hyphen Aria and Sundara. Moving on to Soundstage, regardless of what open back headphones I was using, it was always trying to push all the music outside my head, put it around me. And with all due respect, op-amp based headphone amplifiers simply cannot do that. Those are limited by current output, by bandwidth. So always sound claustrophobic inside my head with little to no depth. And that's really one of the reasons why I will always have an all-discrete Class A amplifier on my table, no matter what. Conductor GT, as Soloist GT before it, was simply untangling my music. It was sorting my music. It was bigger sounding. It was more holographic sounding, more 3D sounding compared to, say, a Fermor and Hypsos. And if you are into live music, classical music, then it will be increasing and decreasing the soundstage size, pretty easily and pretty fast. Just arm yourself with an amazing open back headphone and just watch your imagination go wild. And that was certainly the case with a pair of Sennheiser HD800S. Usually with solid state amplifiers, you are getting a very good depth, maybe an amazing left-to-right soundstage. But with Conductor GT, you're basically getting both, as if someone swapped those V6 Vivid op-amps with some new old stock vacuum tubes. And there's another surprise: just swap that stock power supply, external power supply, with a supercharger, and more air will be hovering around, adding a sensation of a three-dimensional sound. Moving on to frequency response, I'm reminding you once again that I'm dealing with a Class A, all-discrete, Burson-made amplifier. And if that isn't sending you already a clear message, then you'll be getting an amazing bass performance. After hooking up the Hyphen Vara to this one, the sub-bass started slamming my eardrums, oozing bad attitude, adding just a little bit more air down low in the bass, making it just fun and engaging sounding. And without a single doubt in my mind, I believe that Conductor GT is one of the best, if not really the best, all-in-one unit for the Hyphen Vara, just adding a much needed rumble down low in the bass while tightly controlling the drivers. Dynamics were impressive, and this is really what makes it so interesting with the Hyphen Vara and with planar magnetics in general. Burson Audio never liked regular op-amps. You'll never find regular op-amps in all their devices, meaning that you'll never get that thin, lifeless, or plain boring mid-range performance. This one is actually a little warmer, a little more mid-centric, more organic sounding compared to regular DAC amp combos. Even pricier DAC amps cannot stand a chance versus this one, like Mytek Brooklyn DAC, like Matrix Audio Element X. This one was simply oozing a little bit more flow, more smoothness compared to those. Its Class A working mode added just a little bit of color, a little bit of saturation, making sure that it will get the right pitch of the human voice. While I wouldn't describe it as overly smooth, overly warm, overly organic sounding as well-made R2R DACs put on hybrid tube-based amplifiers, it gets just a slice of that kind of sound, so it moves slowly towards that kind of sound. While I really like the treble extension on former Conductor devices, some of them were putting on display a higher treble energy that didn't work that well with all my headphones. Of course, you can tame that treble by swapping Vivid with classic op-amps, but that is no longer the case with the Grand Tourer. after adding the supercharger, I'm no longer getting that listening fatigue, that glare. So at this point, it's exactly as clean, as detailed, as extended in the treble, but this time around it's more refined. It's more relaxed sounding in here, and I'm no longer skipping my progressive rock playlist with this one. Alright guys, this thing doesn't look as a solo VGT with a great DAC section stitched together, as Burson further optimized its airflow, its cooling, there's more inputs, more outputs, and of course a higher idling current compared to solo VGT, making it a much better deal in so many ways. It was not that silent with IEMs, that's true, and that Noctua fan might put off several people. Otherwise, you're looking at a great sounding DAC amp combo that has all the power you can think of, that was clean and transparent, that was pushing music outside my head, and for all of the reasons combined, it's my pleasure awarding it with my highest gold award. Okay guys, I hope you enjoyed my review. My full in-depth review can be found below, please check it out. And as usual, listen to my tunes, be positive, and I'll see you soon. Cheers!